Hey guys, this is Sunsfan and welcome to the Dota Cinema Guide for Juggernaut. This was written and approved by our good friend Dota2 Bowie. Be sure to follow him on his social media as well as subscribe to his Dota2 YouTube channel for more in-depth analysis. This is updated for patch 7.22H. Keep in mind that as updates come out, some of this information could change, although it's likely most of it will still be highly relevant. Juggernaut is one of the most straightforward Dota heroes, which makes him a perfect choice if you're newer to the game. He's mainly played as a safe lane hero and has a great mix of kill potential, farming capabilities, and teamfight. When it comes to his skill build, Juggernaut is a fairly simple hero. His first point and skill to always be maxed is Blade Fury, since it gives you the ability to kill people, especially in the early stages of the game. It's also an easy way to push a lane safely. One of the most common Juggernaut mistakes is the obsession with his critical strike. The scaling is absolutely awful as you're spending 3 points in a spell, and it doesn't even double the amount of damage it does. That being said, a value point is really good. The biggest mistake players do is underestimate the value of Healing Ward, which is mostly because people don't know how to use the spell properly. And we're not even talking about the micro here. The spell should be used every time you want to go for an objective beforehand. The reason people ignore Healing Ward is because they tend to just remember it exists after they get initiated. They just throw it down and it gets killed immediately because you're surrounded by multiple enemies. But the correct way to use it, if you can, is to have it ready and in a position that is hard for the enemy to reach. Fountain level of healing is really, really good. But going back to the skill build, a lot of pros will max Healing Ward before even putting any points in crit, and that's because their playstyle is way more teamfight oriented. I believe that for the general public, this probably doesn't make sense, since you're not going to find enough situations for it to be worthwhile. But a good rule of thumb is to have it at level 2 and max the crit later. In case you feel like the game has a lot of team fights though, consider giving that skill some love because I guarantee that it's more impactful than increasing your chance to crit slightly, especially early on. The talent tree for Jug is relatively simple. While stats at 10 is what most players do, movement speed does have its place. The reason you get the stats normally is because of Jug's absolutely abysmal mana pool. In fact, that's why drums became so popular on the hero in the first place. But overall, move speed is great if you go drums and Yasha, as it just makes sense in games where you have things like Magnus empowering you, for instance, and all you want to do is farm. In games that feel hard, or in those that you can't or won't fight, move speed also allows for better farming patterns and split pushing. But if you do go move speed, you better have drums to compensate for mana, and then get a Yasha at some point because that's what makes the talent good. At level 15, you're almost always getting the attack speed, as it will synergize well with your ult. The few Juggernauts I've seen going for the other talent are the ones that go for the magic damage build, which is quite a rare occurrence and we wouldn't really recommend it for most games. If you do go for it, just make sure you get the Blade Fury damage talent level 20, since they do work quite nicely in conjunction. For 20, most Juggernauts get the armor talent, but there are a couple of scenarios where the Blade Fury DPS can be good. If you're against a Spectre, for instance, that constantly deals radiance damage to you and reflects all of your Maelstrom and MKB procs, you can use this talent to still man up on her, as you'll be taking less damage. You'll still be relevant as well, since the Blade Fury damage is pretty mediocre in the mid game without this talent. Other interesting uses of the talent have to do with your allies. Heroes like Grimstroke and Lich make Blade Fury way better, and if you feel like your ally will play around this interaction, then consider learning it. And at level 25, Omni Slash Duration is pretty good, even though the number feels a bit underwhelming. But if you're against a Faceless Void or Invoker, for instance, the other talent can be a good way to just try and survive the Cataclysm Chronosphere combo. Item-wise, Juggernaut is also quite straightforward. You leave the base with Stout Shield, Double Tango, and Salve, but you can substitute the Salve for 2 branches or a Mango. People used to get Mango for Jug a lot because of his bad mana pool, as well as the fact that he had kill potential, but currently level 1 Blade Fury is just not really that good. Your kill potential usually comes at level 3, but if you have either a Grimstroke or a Lich there, there's definitely a chance for that, so always be mindful of your lineup and adapt accordingly. As the laning stage progresses, you can always get boots if you think the enemy can be killed, but avoid it against the likes of, let's say, a Windrunner. It's pretty unlikely that you can kill her, so Wraith Bands are probably the way to go. Wand is also a must on this hero since we've already established the fact that his mana pool blows. In addition, you usually want to have 2 Wraith Bands, Phase Boots, Wand, Stout, and Quelling Blade after the laning stage ends. At that point, you usually have 3 items to consider, and they are Maelstrom, Drums, and Yasha. The first thing you need to ask yourself is whether you need Manta or not, and that question can be a little bit tricky. Manta, of course, is a dispel, so against heroes with silences, it will be a great addition, but as you guys know, not all games are equal. Manta's not that good of a farming item, and generally not even that strong of an item anymore to begin with. but it can still be needed at times. But if Manta is not the right choice, then feel free to go Yasha into Maelstrom. Overall, it's still hard to go wrong with Drums, Yasha, or Maelstrom as your first items. Into the late game, Mjolnir is the best damage and farming item for sure, not only because you usually will have Maelstrom anyways, but because of how it interacts with your ult. Your ult used to deal fixed damage, but now you get a fixed time frame in which you attack freely, and thus the attack speed, damage, and procs from the item are priceless. Another must-have on Juggernaut is Monkey King Bar, as it has a proc as well. Proccing items are super important on Jug since you can attack during Blade Fury. As a result, you're using your already high attack speed to safely deal damage, whether you're ulting someone or Blade Furying and chasing. In general, the best late game items on Juggernaut are Butterfly, Abyssal Blade, and Scotty. Of course, don't forget about that BKB though. A lot of Juggernauts sometimes lose games just because they double down too much on damage, thinking that they're just fine with the magic immunity provided from Blade Fury. But the issue with that is, even with proccing items, you still will be dealing less damage to enemy heroes when spinning, so extra magic immunity can definitely be needed. We touched on this a little bit early on, but Juggernaut is a carry and thus your job is to win the game for your team. To do that, you have to buy time for your team when you need to delay, but also have the capability of fighting when you're needed. Let's dissect these two topics. Juggernaut can buy time in multiple ways. Because Blade Fury is a spell immune ability and also deals AoE damage, you can push creep waves safely when a lot of other carries can't in certain stages of the game. As a result of that, you should abuse the hell out of this. Of course, it isn't so safe when you're playing against BKB piercing abilities like Black Hole, Chronosphere, or Fiend's Grip. Since Manta is a common item in your build, you can also push waves without even being there, which increases your farming and wave clear potential. Okay, so that's quite easy and simple, but the more complex topic is the other one. Juggernaut is quite reliant on Omnislash to fight, as without it, you just lack that burst damage. In general, you just don't offer any control, and as the game goes longer, you can start to fall off. So it's a great rule of thumb to avoid fighting when your Omnislash is on cooldown. But a thing people often do when they have this certain mindset is to not group up or fight at all. This mindset can be a little bit costly in many situations. When your ult is down, you can't really fight in the same way, but you're still amazing at sieging. So as a general rule, if you win a small fight, don't TP to the other side of the map just because Omnislash is on cooldown. Group with your team, drop Healing Ward, and just hit the tower. If you're worried about a response, make sure to put your Healing Ward in a tree line or an enemy fog spot. Once the enemies that you killed respawn and try to mount a defense, just run. Or just spin TP and go to the opposite side of the map. Not only have you forced TPs, but you've dealt tower damage and bought time that you can use to both farm and wait for your Omnislash to come back. And going back to the spin TP mechanic, a lot of people may not know this, but because Blade Fury has no cast time, you're actually able to TP and then spin. This can be used when TPing to a tower to defend, as you will be a happy magic immune Juggernaut. And while Juggernaut is a relatively simple hero, he's also pretty easy to screw up in actual fights, but luckily there's an easy fix. First, you need to look at the enemy team and identify any saves. Do they have Glimmer, OD's Astral, Shadow Demon's Disruption, basically anything that can mess up your ult. If they do, then engage away from those heroes or wait for those abilities to be used to commit your ult. Another great tip about Omnislash is if there are multiple targets in a fight, you can right-click towards the direction of the one you want to hit the most. It's not a 100% chance that Jug will actually follow you, but it definitely does make it more reliable. Once your ult is used and you hopefully kill the target, you can keep hitting. But if you feel as if danger awaits you at the end of an Omnislash, you can always just Blade Fury after it to spin TP or just keep hitting. Remember that you can proc Maelstrom, Bash, and MKB through your spin, so just keep attacking while you spin and don't AFK like a lump. Another good tip for fights, and this is especially for when you're walking towards one that is already occurring, is using Healing Ward beforehand and try to get into a secured spot, or just far away from the enemies, while you help your allies with Healing Ward. Healing Ward's definitely the most poorly used spell on Jug. Even when a fight seems so lost to the point that you can't join, or you don't have Omni to fight, you can try to use the spell and at least help some allies disengage. Since Juggernaut is so hard to kill as long as you have Blade Fury, this is not that hard to do at all, and can win you games, as well as the all-important endgame commends. For the laning stage, Lich and Grimstroke are amazing to have as allies, but in general, any slows and stuns are what you really need to get kills on most targets, especially after level 3. Crystal Maiden is also an iconic duo, not only for her CC, but also her aura, since your mana pool needs all the help it can get. With just that, you can use Blade Fury way more liberally for farming camps and waves. Magnus and Ogre are also great pairings as they can help you flash farm, as well as fight more efficiently. Since Juggernaut lacks control and is quite bad at initiating, any long-range disable is welcome, so you can actually output your damage. On the other side of the coin though, Juggernaut does struggle against 3 types of heroes. Number 1, heroes with saves. We mentioned that you rely a lot on your ultimate to get kills, and that's similar to the likes of Faceless Void. Number 2, heroes that have inbuilt bashes or end up building basher themselves. Juggernaut's not great at manning up, so the Ursas of the world that not only can tank your Omni, but also build Blink and Basher can end up being quite challenging to face. More examples include the likes of Slardar, Void, Slark, and Monkey King. And finally, number 3, we have the BKB piercing ability heroes like Pudge and Bane. You can also add an extra category for heroes that have no cast point, or are Blink initiation heroes like Shaker. Since you play so boldly, you can sometimes get a little bit overconfident and just die to heroes like Shaker or Storm that just initiate too fast for your fingers to handle. Thanks for watching, guys, and be sure to subscribe to the Dota Cinema channel for more guides to come. Big thanks again to Dota 2 Boy for all his help. Let us know if you have any suggestions in the comments, and tell us who you'd like us to do a guide on next. Until next time, this is SunsFan signing out.